In this video, we will show how we conducted successful linguistic fieldwork in the middle of a pandemic. My name is Péter Jeszenszky. I'm a geographer and I never thought I would ever do linguistic fieldwork. I was working a lot with linguistic data during my PhD, and then I got a job at a project where the data actually had to be collected as well. However, we didn't get the best year to conduct fieldwork as COVID-19 hit us in 2020. We actually started our fieldwork in February 2020, but soon we had to realize that we have to change the way we are doing it. The main reason for me to doing this, to show this video, because we did this change from an in-person interview to a virtual interview quite successfully. And through our example, we can show how it is possible for a broader public to conduct linguistic interviews in a virtual environment. What I will talk about, I'll tell you the story how we switched from in-person interviews to virtual interviews and how we are conducting them successfully. I will mention some useful programs and use cases, and I'll give you some pieces of advice on how you could make it successful yourselves. So virtual interviews are quite new, and there are no clear rules on how one should do them. Unsupervised direct data collection is of course nothing new or not something very new. In geography, for example, we can think of volunteer geographic information, but in any other walks of science, it is usual to collect data from online sources and then crunch them for your needs. For medical studies, one can also ask the participants to, for example, do a diary. But nowadays, even doctors are doing video conferences with their patients. And the next step would be to devise, for example, questionnaires that respondents fill out or answer, or they can record their own voices without you being there. Of course, for a lot of information, it is crucial that the interviewer to be there to intervene, to make sure that the respondent had understood the question and that the respondent records it in a way that you would need them to record it. This is especially important in linguistics, where one might want to explore, for example, phonetic qualities. So very clear and very precise records are needed. For social linguistics, presence or a report situation might also be very important to build trust and to elicit honest answers, to be able to talk freely to the people. The way we would want to make an interview always depends on what kind of data you want to get from people, the sensitivity of the data, the kind of data, the precision that you need, and the people that you actually want to record. So linguistic interviews, of course, in pre-digital times happened in person. For example, researchers working on the Sprachatlas der Deutschen Schweiz would go and spend a whole day with the respondents, asking them hundreds to even thousands of linguistic questions in their homes. And other surveys were conducted, for example, by sending out a lot of questionnaires to people as letters and then collecting them back per post. These surveys also recorded huge amounts of data and organized them, for example, to such atlases. And this is what became the basis of linguistic surveys as we know today. And that's how they did it for several decades. Our project has set out to do something similar. We have only 5 years though, including the collection of the data and the organization of the data in a form that we can publish it. The main goals of stats and who we want to record, we are basically curious about the everyday dialect speakers all around German-speaking Switzerland. And we actually want to compare most of our data to the Sprachatlas der Deutschen Schweiz, which you've seen before, to assess the way dialect has changed in the meantime. But our main point is that we want to collect 1,000 respondents, eight people from each location. So for young, between 20 and 35 years old, for all over 65 years old, actually between 60 and 80 after all. Most of them, and they had to leave most of their life in their reference location, and at least one of their parents had to come from the reference location. Their commuting time might not be longer than 2 hours, and basically they had to be like real locals and with the Swiss German mother tongue. On this map you can see the 125 locations that we recorded, and basically the unsupervised part of the interview is a questionnaire that respondents had to fill out online afterwards. What do we actually record? We have 115 question items, which are basically words and sentences in completion or translation tasks, or naming objects on photos. But we don't do, for example, multiple choice or ranking or true or false, usable, acceptable questions. We also record a spontaneous speech. We have them read a translated text that they had to prepare in advance. We do an imitation task, a task of perception, how they perceive dialects, the way they draw it on a map. We also collect a lot of metadata in an unsupervised manner. This type of information might be similar to metadata without an actual audio interview. We do it online with all the participants using the online surface called Questback, but Google Forms also exists, and many other platforms are at your service to do this. What you ask and how you ask depends also on your respondents, the data that you need, and the research you're doing. Importantly, you have to make sure that you're doing it in correspondence to the data protection policy of, for example, your university. And they might require you to anonymize the data that you collect. Also, before the interviews in our project, for example, in our case, we had our respondents to read about our research a bit and to fill out a consent form that they let us use their data, their metadata, and the audio that we record from them. So we started our data collection in 2020, in February. Our equipment was, we conducted our interviews at the beginning in person. So we had our laptops in front of our participants. We had them wear a clip-on microphone. We ourselves wore headphones, and we had an external amplifier to get rid of discrepancies in the audio data. We used speech recorder to put our prompts together and show it to the respondents. And basically, the leader of the test, the interviewer, was clicking through kind of like slides, and the interviewer decided when to record the voice of the respondent. So this is how the in-person interview looked.
Und wird jetzt gleich 2 oder Satz. Signalton, abwarten und her.
Okay, good. 心配しないで。心配しないで。心配しないで。引きにくい釘。引きにくい釘。引きにくい釘。箸で箸を使う。箸で箸を使う。箸で箸を使う。
Wunderbar.
Then COVID hit, and we had to switch. We were thinking about how we could carry on with our interviews. First, we thought that we should just stop for some months and wait until COVID-19 is soon over. Luckily, we decided to go and implement a plan B, even if we thought it would be just temporarily. And it proved to be a good decision, as it is now March 2021, and it's still not possible, for example, to do our interviews with older participants easily. And it also turned out that our smartphones microphones today have a quality that is comparable to most professional microphones that linguists were using. And of course, recording people with their smartphones would also mean that they have different devices and different environments. So there is also a lot of limitations and challenges when trying to record people with their smartphones. So we need to control that they are in a place which is optimal for us as possible. And in our case, we wanted to avoid echo and external noises because we wanted to record phonetic items for which small nuances in the record are also important. Also, we did not get extra funding to make a rolling COVID-proof speech lab like the one Martijn made in the Netherlands. What we actually use, we developed a smartphone application with an external partner. Basically, we converted the slides that we used in speech recorder into a sequence of images in our application. And the application itself sends the recorded audio data to our server immediately and automatically. One of the hardest parts to do in the switch was to how could we have our respondents draw a map online. But we came up with a web application for that too. And since then, both the smartphone application and the web mapping application is being adopted by other projects as well. What you can do to make it more easily for yourself, of course, it's the best if the respondent sees every prompt the same way as you see it. Very easy setup would be to interview a participant through Zoom and show them like printed images, or you can share your screen and show a PowerPoint of pictures with the questions. At the same time, you can record their voice using their smartphone with an appropriate application. For example, the voice recording app ASR, or you can even use the voice recording function of WhatsApp. In the worst case, and if the sound quality allows you, you can also just go ahead and record your Zoom session or record the sound of the Zoom session with your own phone, of course, taking care of the respondent's consent. Our Zoom or our setup looks like this on our computer when we do a virtual interview. We see ourselves and the respondent, and we can follow the screens that the respondent sees in their application using the PowerPoint slideshow. Besides, we can also see the incoming data in our server using a basic web browser, and we can always listen to them. Now you will see an interview, how a virtual interview situation looks like.
Perfekt, gut. Wenn du jetzt eins weitergehst, dann kommen wir zu der Möglichkeitsform. Also wenn ich könnte, dann würde ich das machen, oder wenn ich könnte, dann mache ich das und das. Wichtig ist von diesen beiden Formen, dass du jeweils die brauchst, die du einfach auch sonst im Alltag würdest sagen. Nicht, dass du ein Konstrukt daraus machst, das du nicht würdest sagen. Wenn du eins weitergehst, hast du eine Beispielaufgabe dazu.
Ah, dann würde ich ins Kino.
Genau. Wenn du eins weitergehst, hast du die Erklärung dazu. Also da müsstest du jeweils den ganzen Satz sagen, wie
wenn ich Lust hätte, einen Film würde ich
hat, dann würde ich ins Kino gehen oder dann ginge ich ins Kino.
Ja.
Genau.
Also würde ich immer den ganzen Satz bei dem sagen.
Exakt. Gut.
Also. Gut, merci. Aber das ist immer noch das Beispiel. Also, ja, okay.
Genau.
Wenn meine Großmutter eine Brille hat, dann würde sie besser sehen.
Super.
Wenn ich die Nase muss schnitzen, dann nehme ich ein Nasentuch.
Ist das eine Möglichkeit oder nimmst du es denn wirklich?
Wenn ich die Nase schnitzen müsste, dann würde ich ein Nasentuch nehmen.
the virtual interviews seem to be working well. We actually did a short questionnaire with the people that took part in person in the interviews and with those that did virtually at the beginning. With a few people, we even repeated the interview virtually. We have asked them a few questions about how they felt about the interview, and the statistics about the results show that the people in person and in virtual situation felt quite similar. To our surprise, people felt even less observed in the virtual situation, and they have felt even less nervous. How we could, or how do we make it work successfully, actually? Of course, at the beginning of the interview, everyone feels a bit nervous, so it's great to talk a bit, to share some clear instructions, and to prepare the respondents in advance to what is waiting for them. Also, we standardize the ways we ask our questions and how we deal with problems, and we prepared backup plans in case something doesn't work out very well online. This allowed us to get good quality records by all our 5 colleagues working in the project. And moreover, we could also employ students to do the interviews for us. So, and they could use the data recorded in their master and bachelor thesis. One of the hardest parts is to find our respondents. So sometimes it's actually harder than doing the interview itself. And it's also hard to get the information out of the people about whether they are suitable for doing the interview themselves. We started off by social media messages and press releases. We even had a spot in the SRF program Schnabelweit on the radio. And later we resorted to getting in touch with local associations, clubs, municipal councils, in order to contact people that are guaranteed to be local. Importantly, people need some incentive to take part in the interview too. So it's a good idea to reward them if you can, because they spend our time, they spend their time on us, and we spend our time on them, of course. Otherwise, you might only get those few people that are super interested anyway to take part in surveys, and your data might become biased through that. Of course, most Swiss German speakers are quite interested in their own dialects, but still we offer them 100 francs for the 3 hours that they needed to work for us. Of course, your interviews might be much slower, so you might not have to pay them so much. What preparations can you do to make it successful? You have to make sure that the respondents understand the goals of the interview and the tasks that they have to do. They should know in advance what kind of tasks they will undertake. They also have to know that they have a limited time, so that they don't blabber the time away and they concentrate on the tasks that you are giving to them. And you have to make sure that they are giving more spontaneous answers, of course, if that's one of your goals. You have to make sure that they are in an environment where they don't have echo or other disturbing noises, such as clicking, ticking clocks, or, for example, air conditioner running in the background, or dogs barking, buses passing by. You have to make sure that your equipment is up to date. You have to test your mode. You have to test how the respondents' potential equipment that they have to use, or the device, the environment that they are in, are appropriate for the records. And you always need to have some plan B, such as different kinds of recording devices have to be known in advance what are appropriate for you. As for ourselves, we also prepared email templates to communicate more easily with the potential respondents, and we prepared information sheets for the respondents so that they know in advance what's waiting for them. And in the first few rounds of interviews, we were thoroughly asking them for feedback. Also, we made some preparation videos, one of which I will show you now.
Ciao zusammen. Ich zeige euch jetzt schnell zeigen, was für Vorbereitungen dass man treffen sollte, bevor wir die Erhebung via Zoom miteinander durchführen. Als allererstes ein paar Bücher besorgen, etwa 20 cm hoch, wo man dann das Nattel darauf positionieren. Da geht es darum, dass das Mikrofon nicht irgendwie von den Fingern oder so berührt wird, weil das Signal wird stören und die Aufnahme unbrauchbar ist. Darum ca. 20 cm hoch, dass der Abstand etwa so ist. Und das sollte auch während der ganzen Erhebung etwa so bleiben. Also man sollte nicht zu nahe gehen, man sollte nicht zu weit weg, dass die Aufnahme immer brauchbar bleibt. Sobald man auf die App geht, die ihr heruntergeladen aus dem Store, kommt man dann rein. Dort bekommt ihr einen 4- oder 5-stelligen Code von uns während der Erhebung, gebt den ein und kommt dann eigentlich in die App rein. Das Allerwichtigste während der ganzen Erhebungssession ist, dass ihr nur dann reden, wenn die Aufnahme auch läuft. Und für das haben wir so akustische Signale. Und zwar, wenn man jetzt hier weiter drückt, sobald man in der App ist, kommt ein akustisches Signal, ein Piepton, und erst wenn der weg ist, wenn man den nicht mehr hört, schnell schnaufen und dann reden. Ja, nicht dann reden, wenn der Piepton läuft. Ich tue euch das schnell demonstrieren. Am besten so. Wir sehen hier, das ist das, was gefragt ist. Ich klicke jetzt auf Weiter und dann kommt das nächste Bild. Blatt. Ich drücke auf Stopp und höre wieder einen Ton, der zeigt, dass die Aufnahme fertig ist. Dann seht ihr hier die 3 verschiedenen Knöpfe. Weiter, hören oder neu aufnehmen. Im Normalfall, wenn alles gut ist gelaufen, drückt man auf Weiter und dann kommt wieder das genau gleiche Spiel. Warten, bis der Ton kommt, bis der Ton vorbei ist. Schnell warten, reden. Kellen. Voilà. Und so einfach ist es.
During the interview, there are some challenges and the respondents also need your guidance. You, for example, you need to control what the interview is, what the respondents are doing during the interview, and whether they do record what you want them to record and the way you want them to do so. So they, for example, they must not fiddle on the microphone of the smartphone. They must not drum with their fingers or heavily breathe in the microphone. You also have to make sure that they say exactly what you want them to say and when, like between the recording tones. And you also have to make sure that you know yourself what you can expect from them, like what possible variants you can expect for the certain prompt that you're showing them. Feedback is also necessary so that the respondent knows that they are doing it the right way, so that they don't get very insecure about their answers. We of course have limitations of the virtual mode. For example, whether this report situation works with this certain respondent, the speed of the internet at your house or at the respondent's house, place, or whether they are connected to virtual network or VLAN mobile network. These things might always pose some problems. Of course, the computer skills of the respondent is a crucial factor. We had some problems with our older respondents, for example. And the quality of records, of course, depends on the smartphone of the person, and yes, the network, as I mentioned before. It's of course cheaper to do it this way. You can do multiple interviews per day rather than having to organize your time to meet several respondents in a faraway village where you have to travel, for example. And in case of our draw a map task, the map that we have them draw is georeferenced instantly. And of course, the main point is that it's safe for COVID and safe for all kind of people to be recorded. So basically, you always need to have a plan B or even a plan C. As an example, again, our draw map task. If the respondent couldn't do it on their own screen, then we shared our own screen. Then we share our own screen, and they basically we give the control of our screen to them, and then they basically draw on our screen, the interviewer's screen. If it still doesn't work, then we just send them a paper map per post and have them record it, their comments on the map through the phone. Another example, we have this risky 10-minute long free speech in the interview, And even though the app records it, it's enough to press the wrong button on the application, and then this record gets overwritten or it just gets lost. So we record this interview on our own phone beside on the computer, and if it all goes well, then we just have to delete it. So it is, of course, hard for you at the beginning, but you will get better by each interview. You have to stay flexible because you might have to alter your ways during the first few rounds of your interview, and you will realize what are the best practices, how it goes the best. Therefore, it's always worth testing out your methods on friends and definitely get honest feedback from the first few interviewees as well. You always have to pinpoint your goals first and try to stay simple at first. And once you see it's working, then you can keep on adding more further layers of complexity. In the name of the stats team, I want to thank you for your opportunity to reach out to you, and I hope your fieldwork will go very well. Thank you.